Okay, lovelies. So I said there's about 34 people registered, and a couple of people weren't able to make it. They're going to listen to the recording, but I think there's a big group, and a lot of you know, and many of you have known for many years, and other people I'm connecting with for the first time. So such a joy to be here with you. And in this class from where I have my office space and where I do in-person consultations and have an apothecary in Massanutten, Virginia. So it's just outside of Harrisonburg and very much immersed in the land. I don't know where you're in from. I know a lot of people are local, a lot of people in many other states. We had some really gorgeous weather to start to come in today. So just really bringing that vibrant energy into our time together. So this class, How Food Can Be Your Medicine, is something very close to my heart, and is kind of the culmination of over 7 years of full-time clinical practice, specializing in women's health, and within that, especially hormonal balance. So I found that food is an enormous topic. It's very sensitive. There can be so many different layers. It's multidimensional, and it's something that is so relevant to all of us. I'm gonna use somebody. Okay. When we're looking at, how can we embody this is something healing that's really working for us? It's a really big question, and into as much as I possibly can share with you this evening. And hopefully, having some fun along and getting to really let down, at the end of the day, just being, fully yourself. You may want to just turn your phone off, just have some time for yourself to unwind. You mentioned that turning your camera on is totally optional, and by no means you ever have to turn it on. I do love seeing people's faces, though. I love that live interaction, so you're more than welcome to do that. And it gives a really nice sense of like almost being together, in the physical space. And if you have any questions, feel free to write it. A lot of times after I go through like a major point or topic, I'll give a little pause to talk about questions. There's a lot of people like coming in, so I'm definitely going to give space for that at the very end. So just depending on the nature of the question, if it's something more detailed, I might wait until the very end, but I'll 100% get back to you. And at that time, once we finish, it's just going to be totally open Q&A. So if you think of anything else that is important for you to bring up, anything that we discussed more clarity about, feel free to let me know then. And there's something about the group momentum that I find is when we're looking at health and healing. And I hope, just looking around, you see how many people are dedicated to health, are interested in this, and that you just feel alone, and you can really tap into and receive that community support. So a little bit of a background about what I do. My mom is the co-host. So thankfully, she's been part of my journey, forever, and such a support. So we're looking at this possibility, how can more education, tools, and knowledge support really open up the doorways for you to go deeper with food? How can you embody a healthier relationship with this life-giving medicine? How can you look at anything that might be or misconceived? How can you look at a relationship with yourself and having more self-love, and food is part of that. And so this is something so sensitive. I want to just acknowledge that this is a non-judgmental, compassionate space. I've been doing lots of workshops, CU courses, events throughout the entirety of my professional career, and also have a long history with my own relationship to food. And I'll get into more of that later. And so all experiences are welcome. I've never once in any of my events ever felt like people have created an unsafe environment, and I plan never to go there. So, just put that out there. And I just always find the most amazing things happen. Like, just staying in that consciousness. And again, we're all here to learn and grow. We've all been through joys and challenges. And so just bringing our shared humanity together. And I'll always be the first one to, speak about my own challenges, so this is very much, we're all in it together. And where so much can happen. So all body sizes are welcome, all life experiences. I see diversity as a strength. So, just welcoming anything you might like to share and contribute. And I'm going to start with a little bit of a guided meditation just for a few minutes, just to have some nice stress relief and a pause from whatever's happening today. And then there will be a little opportunity to introduce yourself. You want to share where you're from and anything that might be important for you to talk about tonight. So if you'd like to join me in closing your eyes, and just do a couple of rolls, just loosening your body. And just take a couple of deep inhales and exhales, connecting to the breath. Just observing how you're feeling in this present moment. Maybe places in your body you're more aware of. Maybe bringing some extra softening, relaxation. Maybe places that might need some extra love and attention. Reflecting on an intention for yourself this evening. What is it that spoke to you to show up for yourself this evening? Is there something around food and nutrition that you're looking to bring about? Is there anything you might want to let go of? Holding that intention close within you. And just take another couple of deep exhales. I'm just really engaging the lower abdomen. All the time you need to gently relax. Open your eyes and just coming back into this present moment together. Okay, one tiny tech thing as we go on. I just saw a comment. I think everybody is automatically muted as you're coming in. Okay, I think I just did. I think we're all set. I think everybody's muted now. So, trying to keep that mute button. And then when you participate, if you chime in with something, you can unmute yourself and then mute it back. And so here we are together, and I would love to just go around and give an opportunity, if you'd like, it's totally optional, to share your name, where you're calling in from, and what's one important thing that spoke to you about joining this class tonight. So feel free to jump in, and I can also go around to specific people in time too.
I don't mind going first. Hey, Whitney. My name is Kim McLeod. I'm calling in from Harrisonburg, Virginia, downtown area. One thing that really interests me about the class, I'm just trying to be more intentional when it comes to eating more just from home. Um, it's definitely like, I think I've been doing better, but just gaining any more insight or knowledge to encourage me to continue exploring the right things for me that works best for me, eating more at home and cooking.
Okay, beautiful. I'm so happy you're here, Kim.
Thank you.
Anybody else want to jump in?
Hi, I'm Kit, and I live in Indiana. And I was interested in the class. I've worked with Whitney years ago, and I've kind of backslid a little bit. So I thought it was a good time to kind of get back on the train of good, healthy eating. And being in menopause has really been an interesting journey. And I just, I want to eat. I want to eat to heal. And I've gained a lot of weight, and I want to love myself through that, whatever weight I am, but with good food. Thank you.
So happy to see you, Kit. Thanks for being here.
Hey everybody, I'm Angela. I am from Chesapeake, but I live in Norfolk in Virginia. I was diagnosed with MS in September, and I'm heavy like a Chevy, so I already needed to lose weight, but I really need to lose it to get my health better and to not have to take any medications, especially shots, because we don't get along. So hopefully I'm going to learn and put to use all of these great things that you're going to share with us.
Wonderful. I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you, Shane. Anybody else want to jump in?
Hey, I'm Briley. I am joining because I just started working with Whitney this year, and I'm just learning a lot about the foods that we put into our body and how it affects us, not just our weight, but how we feel and how we eat. So I'm just excited to learn. My biggest focus is healing from 3 childbirths in 4 years. So really excited to learn and be here.
Very happy you're here. Thanks for coming, Riley.
I don't mind going. This is Susan. I'm from Virginia. I love food, and I feel like I love food a little too much. Like especially foods that aren't healthy for me, processed sugar. And I prioritize eating lots of plants, fruits, and vegetables, but I still find myself going back to processed sugar, and I want to find a way to eat those foods in moderation, because I know if I restrict, I'm going to end up binging. So I want to find a healthy relationship with foods overall, and with myself, so that I no longer want to put those kind of foods into my body to excess, if that makes sense. Yeah, thanks.
Oh, thank you for sharing, Susan. Yeah, that sounded very clear, and so happy to be here and hope to support you tonight.
Hi, my name is Lizzie, and I'm also calling from Harrisonburg. Kit, I so appreciate you sharing your experience. I'm in the same boat. I feel like I have had a handle on things, and now I've hit this big premenopausal hormonal shift, and I'm not recognizing my body. So I'm just trying to figure out how to be more at peace with that, and tools to work with those hormones.
So glad you mentioned that. So yeah, several people talking about menopause and food, nutrition, healthy relationships with food, and we'll dive into all of these things. So yeah, I'd love to hear from everybody. Anybody else want to jump in?
Hi, I'm Carol Yoder, and I'm also in Harrisonburg. And I'm excited. I do love food, and learning anything about it is exciting, but to especially learn ways I can use it to benefit myself. I'm on the same boat as a couple other people, heading into premenopausal changes, and just wanting to know how to stay at a good weight for the rest of my life. I'm not battling the ups and downs, and also springtime brings cleanse time, so getting some tips on cleansing for the spring. Thanks, excited to be here.
I'm so happy you're here, Joe.
I guess I can go next. My name is Jaleesa Smith, and I'm also from Virginia. I was actually referred to this Zoom from a professional who was telling me, and we were having a talk, deep dive about how nutrition is good and how, you know, it can really change the body and heal the body. And, you know, there's a lot of things that people struggle with. And me, my weight has been something that I've always struggled with up and down. And eating, I love food, but I feel like I've also had a bad relationship with food if I'm in an emotional place as well. So I'm kind of eager to hear what I can just learn about food in this class and what can be beneficial to how I can apply it to my life as well, being that I have a daughter and a husband that I'm responsible for cooking for. It can be a lot. So I'm excited to hear what this class has to offer. And I also want to appreciate you for even doing this class because it's so helpful from what I've even read online already.
Thank you so much for sharing. I'm so grateful that you're here. Yeah, it's just appreciate you opening up and sharing where you're at. And, you know, and food is an enormous subject. And, you know, I haven't seen it be an easy one in women's health. It's just so nuanced and complex, but there's a lot of support available. And, you know, anything you can do will help you. And not only yourself, as you know, it's connected with everybody else in your life and your intimate relationships. And I'm gonna make Shalisha, is that how you pronounce your name?
Yes.
Okay, beautiful. All right.
Thank you so much. You said it correct.
Okay, dears, anybody else want to join in? Let's see, I think a couple more people to hear from if you'd like. Okay, so hi Chloe, hi Carly, and also welcome to type in the chat. I know sometimes life happens, so feel free to, you know, write a little bit about yourself if you'd like to. And so is going into, you know, this idea, like how can food be your medicine? And, you know, sometimes it's like, is that even possible? Sometimes it may feel like that has never been a reality, or it's been such a long time ago. And so where this is coming from, I think, you know, a lot of people already know me very well. Other people I'm just now meeting, and, you know, there's a little bit of a blip on the flyer, and there's a lot of info on my website, but just a little bit of background about what brings me to offering a class like this and sharing these teachings with you. And it's always such an honor and joy and such a humble privilege to be in a space where I'm passing on traditional holistic health knowledge and wisdom that was passed on to me by my teachers. So I just want to give so much gratitude to so many extraordinary people before me. And if I'm sharing the teachings right, it will stay timeless and very relevant for the modern age and very practical. And so I have, so many different things to talk about with food. I will say that through my own experience, like growing up, I was very interested in health and nutrition from a young age. I've always loved to cook. And now, as I said, I've been doing this full time in clinical practice for over 7 years. But first and foremost, before that, I did a lot of my own inner work and healing journey for a long time. And I grew up doing gymnastics, and I trained for that like really hard. I was also a dancer, and I felt very conscious about like the pressures around being fit and being able to have a body that worked. And so so first and foremost in my family, I love to cook. I love to try different things. I think I kind of picked a lot of these things up again from my ancestors, because a lot of times I would just love to like play around in the kitchen. So truly food has been such a joy. And that's one thing I really want to impart and, you know, share some ideas and inspiration around sharing that with you. And then there was also a lot of struggle too. And I remember when I was in high school and training, I actually started to have an eating disorder, and it wasn't formally diagnosed. I was the top of my high school class. I graduated with the highest grades. I got a merit scholarship to an Ivy League school. And I also started to struggle and feel like depressed. And like there was just so much pressure around me, and I didn't really feel like I could talk about it. And like food was like something I could control, or was like an out. And I started to have an unhealthy relationship with something that I just didn't really fully understand. Also, you know, just hitting like hormonal balance, and all of those changes that comes, and menstruating, and just not feeling really well supported, and not really knowing how to embrace those changes. I spent a month in Kenya, my junior year of high school, which was amazing. I could, you know, talk forever on that. I had such a life-changing experience, and that was a turning point for me. Just seeing a very different culture, and I couldn't even talk about eating disorders after that for me. And I have a lot of friends that have been through so many different experiences, and it's such a sensitive topic. But I really needed to get out and learn. And also my younger brother was extraordinarily supportive, and just somebody I could really talk to about everything and help me work through that. So that was like a really close call, and thankfully it didn't go for very long. But I don't forget that, right? And that's something like I've seen a lot of my clients struggle with, and a lot of close friends, for a really long time. And also sometimes it's not something you even talk about. It can just be, you know, not even getting any kind of healthcare support, or it might be in a much more severe level. There's so many different ranges. And then also going through some health challenges, and not having you know, modalities that worked for me initially, and feeling like I had unexplained weight gain. And so that prompted me to learn a lot about holistic medicine and things that really worked. So that's something that, you know, taught me so much about what's out there in the holistic health world. And, you know, through that, there was like a lot of different events, but I went through Hashimoto's, anemia. I felt like I had a lot of unexplained weight gain for, you know, certain times in my life. And all of those things I was able to bring about balance and restoration with 100% natural tools. And, you know, there's a lot of trial and error there. And that's what I like to save my women, hopefully time and energy, you know, just really, you know, not going through those things. And then everything that I learned and gleaned. And I have 2 master's degrees. One is in education, one is in science. So bridging a lifelong love of learning and sharing, and looking at lots of different learning styles, and holding this value in all of my work for long-term sustainable health and healing. And that's something I reflect as being an owner at Four Seasons Harmony, this small holistic healthcare practice now, is this space for lifelong education and intergenerational sharing, talking about more women's health issues. And that village support is being, you know, such a positive thing for all of us, to embody more sustainable health and healing. And the Master's of Science in Clinical Herbal Medicine overlapped very intimately with the Clinical Nutrition Master's program. And I did several years of very close work with Ayurvedic practitioners for my own personal healing journey, and then professionally getting training, like how to kind of take on somebody's lifelong successful cleansing and Ayurvedic practice. So learning a lot about Ayurvedic nutrition and cleansing, and then seeing a huge need that was unmet in my first year of practice for more hormonal balance support and tools around food and nutrition. So a lot of women telling me, you know, for like 10 years struggling and not really getting anywhere, not having answers for chronic health problems, and oftentimes very educated and just really trying to find helpful tools and ways to empower, and still just struggling there. So there's a lot that can happen when we feel like we should look like a certain way. I think that's something that I feel, and I see a lot all the time. There's a huge hurdle for women to really love themselves and their bodies. In America, it's kind of like there's so many messages that are negative and harmful about how we should look, how we should think and act, and not really accepting like all the different perfect ways that we can be in our body. And I think there's more discussions going on now collectively as a whole. And just a lot of things we see, like photoshopped images of unrealistic bodies all the time. And that's just not practical for any of us to embody. So we have these, harmful cultural messages, like unrealistic expectations, and also just a lack of education and support. So you don't get a lot of these things, like even in very formal schools and in college. The average time that an MD will receive nutrition training is an hour, in their entirety of medical school. So, as you're looking at naturopathic or functional medicine doctors, it's something that is still not very normalized in the conventional healthcare world, at least in the States. And so I feel like this is something that is showing up in our, ongoing experiences as women. Okay, we have to eat to live. It's so necessary on a daily basis. It's a basic biological need. And like, what do I do? Like, how do I eat? What do I fill up on? How do I feel confident? How do I know that it'll work for me? And just this morning in sessions, this is coming up again. And like somebody I just met, and incredible healer, and is like just feeling so overwhelmed, like reading all these books and like trying to be really conscious and healthy, and then getting lots of confusing messages. So like even within the nutrition world, sometimes it's hard to glean, okay, like, well, all of these things sound good, but like, how does that actually apply to me? So for all those reasons, I don't know if anybody else can relate, to those things. It's can feel really confusing, and challenging and frustrating. And we also go through different times in our life as women with our hormone balance. We can move and be in different environments, go through more high stress or low stress times. So it can very quickly become very confusing, and overwhelming, to look at food and nutrition. So we want to look at, what is the possibility though for you, like, and going back to that place of confidence, empowerment. So there are several different handouts that I have, I'm going to be referring to, and I shared those in an email like right before we hopped on. So just in case you didn't see that, you have all of that in your inbox. If for any reason you didn't get those, please let me know and I'll share that with you later. And I'll just hold them up as we're going through. And this is probably the biggest one, like how food can be your medicine. So for this live class, I'm not going to be sharing my screen or doing a lot of like reading. It's just very like live and experiential together. But just trust that there's a lot of written information here you can go back to. Don't feel like you have to memorize anything. And also, we're coming at, different levels in life experience. So just trust you're going to hear exactly what you need in the right timing. And, if there's one thing I seek to continually impart, it's looking at healing in a slow, steady, and sustainable way. And that's what holistic medicine is all about. So, and I see this a lot in the food and nutrition world, and I call it out all the time. I'm like, okay, well, yeah, you can do a lot of things in 30 days, and it probably feels really good, and it's incredible. But then what happens on the other side? Like, is it actually realistic to integrate that? And hopefully it is. When it's not, though, it can feel like a roller coaster, and it's like starting and stopping. And so, so I want to hold space for each of you to embody long-term, sustainable, healthy habits, around food. So that's usually, not an overnight process, but even just attending and showing up is moving mountains in the amount of impact and energy. So there's so much that can happen, just by bringing your attention to healing and really wanting that for yourself and moving toward it. And so we're going to go into all of the points that I listed, and I know it's generally spoken on the flyer about why individual constitutional needs matter a lot with food and nutrition. General one size fits all approaches I've seen rarely work in the long term. And, some of the nuances within women's health and hormonal balance, talking about safe and supportive cleansing. This is a very big topic, and I see as something that I hear most of the time stories when it's not done in a healthy way or with lack of education. And I did that a lot when I was younger, and I thought that I was taking really good care of myself, and sometimes I just didn't cleanse well. So I just want to give you some of the basics about healthy cleansing, and it's very helpful in holistic medicine to do regular cleanses for sure. So, some overview about that, and also, just supportive holistic knowledge, for your mind, body, and spirit on how you can look at, food as something that is a daily part of your life and really works. Most of you are aware that I studied a lot of Ayurvedic medicine as well as traditional Asian medicine. I also have a background in indigenous studies and studied with a lot of tribal communities. And so bringing like all of the wisdom that I possibly can when I'm talking about holistic health, and looking at where we're living in these indigenous medicine pathways and this connection to land, very universal, and can really help support us on our path, and how we can look at seasonal eating and living in harmony with nature. And that usually never fits into a box or is like the same thing year round. So we want to be really open and flexible to tuning in with like what's going on seasonally with foods, how are we feeling during different times of the year. And in that sense, it's always going to be a dance. And it really does involve activating our intuition, which is a real strong suit for women. And it's something in all the holistic modalities we can really tap into and cultivate. So that will always help you. And, from day to day, sometimes you might burn more or less calories, you might be more or less active. You might be, more mentally engaged or less. And so that's going to rise and fall, and it's kind of tuning into what you feel like you need. And that's a lived, heart and gut experience. And that's very different than trying to logically follow something. And I love that. I'm a total math and science nerd. It's great. However, it also tends to not be as grounded, when it's just looking at, I should do this, or I should just strictly follow this. It can start to feel very restrictive quickly. And maybe miss some of the nuances just of how unique the female reproductive system is in our physiology, which is always changing. So female hormones are changing every 2.5 days. So most definitely our food is going to reflect how we have different needs, and that's changing. So that's something I see a lot. It's kind of just accepting that that's how it is, and that's okay. And that's beautiful. There's so many gifts with that. And we're not a 9-to-5 body or model. And just kind of letting ourselves free of that idea to try to, push it like it should always be the same or just follow one thing for the rest of my life. And then that can help a lot around food. Is like, wow, it can be really interesting, and there can be so many different layers. And also there's not really like, quote unquote healthy, unhealthy foods when we look at what is something that might work for you now at this time of your life, and another time it might not work as much. So when looking at this idea of holistic medicine, okay, what does that mean? And just break that down a little bit more. So holistic means, mind, body, and spirit is inextricably linked. And so we're acknowledging our physical health and just as much our emotional, mental, and spiritual health. So, and everything I do is always very universal, open to everybody. And so this is acknowledging though that there's a lot more going on, beyond our physical body. I think as women, we tend to be very in tune with it, just how emotional we are. And we really need that bonding, to support each other and feel like we have healthy relationships. And also, to have a healthy relationship with ourselves. So we want to bring that awareness in with food, that it's very life-giving and it's going to satisfy our basic biological needs. And it can be so much more than that. So there's an acknowledgement of vital, like, life energy that's running through everything in holistic health. And there's different names for that. So prana, chi are some major ones, and Ayurveda and traditional Asian medicine. And it's kind of like when you feel like you're having great energy, if you have that energy flowing, you feel like you are just in flow with life, like things are moving. And that's when it's working in a very balanced way. So holistic health always looks at that possibility, around food, that it's something that can satisfy us on a basic level with our body, and I feel like it's also satisfying our emotional needs and helping with our life force to stay really strong. So, looking at like this Hearst handout, there's a couple of quotes there, and it's so interesting, that Hippocrates is known to be like the father of modern Western medicine. Is very much into nutrition. Let food be thy medicine, and let medicine be thy food. And it's something I think we can really reclaim more. So that was always there and never lost, even though it has been more, I think, collectively. And so, at a certain point, we just always have to look at food for healing. I found it's really hard to ignore that. And it's also okay to make lots of choices. So nothing that I'm saying will conflict necessarily with anything else you're doing. Everything that I do is integrative. And usually this is always a very safe place to look at doing things on your own, looking at food. So just trusting your own innate wisdom, and knowing what you need. So also in the level of holistic health, and especially in Ayurveda, it's kind of this acknowledgement that, like, on a soul level, you're all already perfect just as you are. So on that level, when I'm sharing all of these teachings and I want to support you to flourish, there's some things that actually aren't broken, and so we don't need to fix them. And from my lens, like, you're already beautiful. You're just perfect as you are right now. So there's no shoulds there, there's no conditions. And that's how I see you. And it can be the hardest thing in the world, though, for us to see ourselves that way. And with any kind of shift we might want to make around food and dieting, cleansing, I found it always helps, first and foremost, to come, in a place of deep self-love as you're going through, and holding those very personal intentions like close to your heart. So usually it's really hard to make those changes for the long term otherwise. So if it's from a place of like, pushing or forcing, or it's like, because I need this because I'm not beautiful, it tends to backfire. It always has for me. And there's been times when I've like trained and people are like, wow, you look so fit and you're doing so well. And like, I just didn't feel it. I may have looked it from the outside, but I didn't feel that within myself, that self-love. So that's something that can take, conscious effort for sure. But I just want to offer that's already a given for me and in all of these teachings. And so then we're more so looking on the level of how can we make a shift to live in greater health and harmony? Like, is there something that's holding me back from living my best life, from being fully present with those I love, and first and foremost for yourself? So there's no separation there. This is all together. And I heard, a lot of people speaking to weight gain, and I hear that all the time. It's one of like the top things that I hear. It's really, really hard, to feel that, and wondering what to do about that. I usually tell people when I'm starting to work with them, if you can, just like gently putting that on the back burner as like an initial goal. And there's so much that we can do with holistic health and medicine. However, if we're looking at long-term habits and values, that is really going to carry you through. And that'll help you make more permanent, sustainable shifts. So, looking at, okay, do I value feeling good? Do I value having work-life balance, and time for myself and self-care? Do I value enjoying the act of eating? Do I value choosing things that are fresh and really full of life force? And looking at those kind of positive reinforcements and habit changes make it a lot easier to then just naturally come into a healthy weight over time. And there's such a range. So, you can work out a lot if you were to gain muscle. I hear this from athletes all the time. It's like, wow, I'm working out more, I'm doing weight bearing, and I gained 10 pounds. And so there's a lot of nuances, like what is healthy? And that's, I think, a constant question for us to sit with in our culture. And you can go down in pant sizes and have more muscle tissue, right? And feel better and be more fit. So sometimes numbers are kind of deceiving. And we know that there's so many factors, the size of your bone structure. And like, I have my grandmother's shoulders, like, that's just never going to change. Like, they're very broad. And there's some things about just accepting our body size and how beautiful that is, right? And in so much variance. And that by making sustainable changes from the inside out, I usually find that the weight loss happens naturally. And you've seen that over and over. There's always a multitude of reasons. And sometimes there's other things we need to look at. And so sometimes, then we can step it up a little bit if we need to, or look at something more like intermittent fasting. But it's so much easier to kind of wait and just focus on those healthy habit shifts first, from what I've seen. So we want to look at this idea of, okay, what does it mean, to look at nutrition from a holistic lens and eating? Well, it's widely acknowledged that how you're eating is more important than what you're eating. And, hopefully that's a very freeing thing. And some of you, that have been working with me intimately know that I always start there. And as long as we need to. That is saying that our habits around stopping to eat meals is going to give us more, return and a higher absorption of nutrients and better nutritional benefit. Just
Hey.
Do you want to introduce yourself though? Okay, all right, so I'm going to meet you. So feel free to type in the chat if you have any questions. So we're looking at, this freedom from getting very specific about nutritional foods as a building block for that work later down the road. And it'll make it a lot easier. And this is something I think the West has a lot of room to grow. And I've seen people with so many lifelong IBS that have had these things go away in their 50s and 60s just by looking at mindfulness eating alone. It's just extraordinary what I see happen. So I know the president of the California College of Ayurveda, Dr. Mal Cochran. I was listening to a talk from him once, and a lot of my Ayurvedic training is through their modalities and curriculum. And it's better if you were to eat fast food in a relaxed way just like slowing down, chewing your foods, really enjoying it, then having this really beautiful organic meal that's very doshic balancing, and eating it on the fly, like with resentment and not really chewing it, just, maybe not even sitting down, as far as its nutritional impact. And we can widely recognize that there's a lot of just highly inflammatory foods that we know are not going to be very life-giving, like fast food. But it's even more important, to establish the mindfulness eating first. Makes sense. So I break that down in the document and give you, a really lovely way to start to track that for yourself. And there's some things as you're going through, like, wow, yeah, I do that all the time, or whoa, I've never heard of that. So I usually say just start with one new thing that's not a regular habit, and just focus on integrating that first, for several weeks, even just for one meal a day. So again, it's much more important to have that long-term habit than like a short fix, and then life happens and it's challenging, and then it's actually not something that'll stay with us. And that's something I've worked on for many, many years. And sometimes you might be the only person in your family, or circle that's doing that. And it might be completely changing, your family culture. And I've been there so many times. And it absolutely can be done now. So I 100% believe that that's possible for you. And it does have a momentum to it. It's just practicing that. And it's very, much something that gives a lot of positive rewards. It just feels really good. And that's what all of these invitations and tools hopefully give you, is like just ways to come more back into yourself. And that reward is exponential. You can't even really quantify that. So I discuss a little bit about the idea of Agni, and that in Ayurveda essentially means your digestive fire. So like the strength of that is something that's always a long-term goal. So it's like having a healthy campfire in our digestive organs that can burn through anything, right? If we put a big log on it, a healthy campfire can burn that up. But if it's a diminished campfire and it's low, it's like, it doesn't matter what we throw on it, or even healthy foods, it's probably not going to be able to digest that very well. So that's something we look at a lot in holistic medicine, is rekindling that strength of digestive fire, keeping it very strong. It can be overburning. I don't see that happen as often in women's health. It's almost always the other one, but it is possible. And in which case we might want to just tame the fire a little bit and bring it back down. And that usually depends on your unique constitutional type, kind of where you lean into having, stronger digestive fire or not as much. And there's ways that I can, answer those questions for people if you're not sure. But a lot of times you just kind of know that for yourself. Do you have more sensitive digestion, or can you kind of just eat everything? Right? I'm the sensitive type. So everybody's. So, looking at, okay, what do you do? There's an Agni enhancing protocol. So that is something you can just kind of go through on a day-to-day basis. And choosing food that looks and tastes good. So regardless of what it is, we're looking at something that's beautiful, and that really helps us enjoy and slow down and be present with our food. Yeah, it really makes a big difference. And that might be a good time. I brought some of my things that are always in my kitchen. I have like coconut shreds. I keep all these edible flowers in jars, and I'll just sprinkle these on my foods. And if I have more time, I get more elaborate. Sometimes just very quick and simple. So rose petals, calendula, achiote powder. It provides like a little bit of red pop. Nettle, just very high in iron and kind of tastes like spinach, but it can just be really beautiful to spread on the top of dishes. So, something like that. You just might have more things around you in your kitchen to decorate foods. And just, preparing it in a way that's like, oh, for you, it really lights you up. And even if you're eating on your own, it's like, yeah, that's really important. And let's see, I'll go through a few more of these. I won't go through the whole list together, and you're welcome to read that over. I would say sitting in a place where you can focus on your meal and dine thoughtfully. So, eating in a calm environment is considered to be very important. And, people that have busy schedules, or if you're eating while you're working, a lot of times they'll say, just clear your desk, maybe light a candle in your home, gradually building up to just having a place that's solely for eating. That's ideal. So it's not a place where you work or do other things or like watch TV, and all those things are super important. But it's very helpful to just isolate that time. It's like, okay, just take a break and giving myself some time and space to fully digest and eat. So my grandparents did this to an art form, and I see this in a lot of traditional cultures too. It was like clockwork. They just stop and eat, and it was always so calm and peaceful. And again, some of these things have just become almost non-existent in the modern world. And I work a lot with leaders, and they end up changing their whole workplace over time, just realizing, wow, it's like, we just need to stop and take a lunch break. And that usually solves a lot of problems and prevents a lot of others too. So taking a little pause before eating, and I usually recommend taking a few deep breaths, to kind of like we did at the beginning, that deep diaphragmatic breathing. It's the fastest way to get out of the stress response if we happen to be there. And later there's a diagram about the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems, and I'll go into more detail about why is that important to not be in the stress response when we're eating. And we literally can't digest our food. And sometimes we don't realize how often we're there. At least, sometimes I'm like, wow, I'm just going, and like, everything's fine. And like, if I try to eat when I'm in that like hurried mode, I kind of notice like, it's just, there's no separation or break there, from that busy mentality. But if I stop and slow down and take a few deep breaths, it helps me reconnect. And I realize like, oh, okay, like I've been working really hard for several hours, and it's okay to take a break right now. And your vagus nerve, the main cranial nerve that's connected to the gut, literally shuts down when we're in fight or flight. And our body is just saying, hey, it's not the best time to digest food right now. We're actually perceiving that this is a survival need. And it's more important right now to take care of that. It's kind of like, the tiger jumping out in front of us. Like, that's what our body's thinking. And it may not literally be the tiger. It might be the work deadline, or, the relationship that we're trying to process, or a conversation. And so whatever that may be, just giving yourself a little time and space, take a break. And taking foods like warm, moist, and oily. And that is a long-term, like, Ayurvedic weight loss secret, is to have more like room temperature, lukewarm foods and drinks, or warmer. And it's really only in America we have ice drinks everywhere. And I still say that, I'm like the person whenever you go out, I'm like, no ice. And I grew up on ice drinks all the time, and now it's like a shock to my system. I'm like, oh my God, like, I've like, you literally change your body over time. And in the warmer months, sometimes some people are like, what about ice cream? I know, see, yeah. So finding like times and space where you're not too cold, if that is something, that we choose, because if it's really cold outside and we bring in more cold foods and liquids, it's just going to slow down our digestive fire and our metabolism. And that's just a lot more work. So, until digestion is really normalized and strong, then leaning more to that way. Now, the summer months are feeling really overheated, and sometimes people have more naturally warming constitutions. If you're that person that's like always hot, you might have some more give there. And on a 100-degree summer day, it might feel really good to have a cold drink, but most of the time, and just using like common sense. So see how that goes for you, and try some of these things out. Let's see. Oh, one more thing before I move on. I say taking food prepared with love is so important. So going back to a pathway of embodying more self-love with food and nutrition, and that's said to speak more to the energetics, about eating. And it's why I say, like, why does mom's cooking taste so good? And it's like, because of all the love that goes into it. And it's like, okay, it can be the exact same recipe and ingredients, and one person prepares it and it just lights up and nourishes you, and another person, it's like kind of dull. Like, the only difference is love. So So that's said to be important, and it's something, you really can taste. Another example I like to give is, like if you go into a place where everybody's really happy and you're like hanging out with friends, after work, you're catching up and you just really relax and let down, and you just feel like, wow, the vibes are so positive there. And you just feel that it's palpable. And then if you were to go into like a bar and people are drinking and throwing things together and there's like, oh, like it just feels so negative. So, it's like that, with energetics and just, tuning into how do you relate to them, and ideally just having more of a positive, loving experience, every time you're eating. For me, it's the hardest when I feel tired or if I'm not in a creative flow. I have to really watch out for that still. So then I'm like, oh, I just have to make food, and then when it becomes a chore, it just has a different energy. And so that's when I'll put on music. And that's one thing I'll do, like, play something that's like positive and light, and just gets me in a really good mood, just in case I don't already feel that. There's a lot of different ways you can do that, call somebody you love, think of your last happy memory or vacation, anything to just switch how you're, thinking, in your mentality before you start cooking and preparing something. So, so that's a practice and makes a really big difference. So also there's something, under the holistic nutrition, also just want to highlight ahara, this concept, which translates to diet in Sanskrit, and it's everything that we intake, and it's so much more than food though. So that's something else that I would love to just impart to you is we're not only intaking, the food that we're eating, like when we're sitting down with meals or snacking anytime, it's also the environment, that energetics, your perceptions, the food and all of the elements around that, the water and air. So in that sense, it's everything we're intaking. And so there's also this recognition that sometimes we just need more time and space to digest life and our emotions. And that's something that can be, a fine line between it. Is it truly food that I need, or is it something else? So if it's something that is not truly hunger and it's more of like an emotional need, or we're just having trouble digesting something big, that can show up as the digestive imbalances or just not feeling well. But it may not actually have anything to do with literally the food. It's just something that's unprocessed in our system. So, having that holistic perspective. And I always find, talking to friends is really helpful, with that. And, I say, usually just pause, when we're not clear. And, and this just does become easier in time. And it is just practice and getting to know yourself. And I know there's times when I was like, gosh, am I really hungry? And I'm just going to eat, like time's ticking. And when I could stop, like, okay, well, sometimes I'm like, if I'm not clear, and most of the time I'm so clear now, but I'm like, if I'm not, like, maybe I just need some tea, water and liquids, or like, maybe I just need to walk around the block and take 10 minutes to be outside. And that's actually more of what I need. And that's going to give me the medicine to come back into balance. So, oh, bye, Lizzie. Thanks for coming. I'll see you later. So we're looking at this concept of ojas. Whenever I do any event, I feel like every single time I always highlight ojas a little bit. It's this really important Ayurvedic concept. It literally translates to our immunity, and it's so much more than that as well. So there's an overview on that. You're welcome to read through, and there's different ways that will always decrease our immunity and our life force, and then there will be ways that always will help to increase that. And it's like an energetic savings account. We can actually literally build that up in time. And in food is a great pathway to do that. So again, it really ties hand in hand with our immunity and also feeling nourished in our heart, which is where ojas is said to reside. So, the nutrition from organic food, oh gosh, it's just so incredible in what that gives us. So we're highlighting that is impacting all of our body systems. So a little bit about individual constitutional needs. So next one about introduction to Ayurveda. And I highlighted that. So there is an article that I shared that gives much more, in-depth explanation of what that means from one of the world's most foremost Ayurvedic physicians. And I also have like a 101 description here. What does that mean? It's the oldest natural healing system in the world. So in that sense, all modern forms of medicine trace its roots to Ayurveda, and it's applicable to anybody in the world. It doesn't matter, religion, background, gender, it's a universal art and science. And it, translates into the science of life and longevity. So this is a pathway for long-term health and wellness. And it does include all, stages of disease, but also it talks about and addresses preventive health. So just very powerful. That was one of the keys to my own personal healing and transformation many years ago. And, many years later on the other side, something I love to share, and very much something I do every day. It's just so integrated in my life. And for me, it opened up a lot of other doors. So I didn't feel like I was actually giving up things. I feel like I gained so much more and have more life and energy and relationships. So there is a saying in Ayurveda that what works for one person might be the complete opposite for somebody else. So on the level of mindfulness eating, we can really celebrate and recognize that works for everybody all the time. And that's a really nice foundation that will all of these serve you well. And then when we're looking at more specific nutritional choices, like it starts to get individual very fast. And thank you so much for coming, Carly. Oh, maybe later. So you're out in Boston. So looking at how then do we understand what we need on an individual level? And I see this a lot within the health when I work with yoga teachers, physical trainers, people that are so health conscious and run into this all the time. So this is not an easy one. And a lot of times it's like, wow, like I've done so much work, with health and well-being, and I'm still kind of stuck. Like, do I do the Mediterranean diet? Do I do the whole food? Like, which one? Like, they all sound so good. And well, all of those could be wonderful, but they tend to be very general. So Ayurveda recommends learning about what your constitutional type is. And this is called our Prakriti. So your unique mind body constitutional type is something that we can assess. And this can really give us a lot more clarity about like your internal makeup. And this is something I've rarely seen in other nutritional philosophy. And it's why I've stayed with Ayurveda a lot over the years. And so you look at this embracing of the uniqueness of who we are, and that there's, no person on the planet that has the exact same constitution. But there are general patterns that we can look at and name and start to categorize, so we can kind of break it down. And so there's considered to be like 7 general doshic types. And if you're brand new to Ayurveda, don't worry at all. And you might want to get an assessment at some point, but you can also just read through and just see what's going on for you right now, and how does this really speak to some of your current health experiences. And just knowing that it's okay to get very individual. So just note what works for you. And that's really important. And it's okay to claim that. And I'm like, yeah, I kind of question things as like, well, everybody should do this. And like, okay, everybody should go dairy free. And I'm like, oh, like, I don't know about that, right? It's like, tell me what your dosha type is. Like, I always want to know that first. And then it gives me a clue about your genetics and makeup and so much more. And so sometimes, and people ask me this all the time, they're like, should I do this food? Should I do that food? Or like, what do you think about that? And I'm like, well, sometimes I say cut out dairy completely. Sometimes I say bring it on, have more dairy. It really just depends on each person's unique needs. So it's not like it's good or bad. And also how you prepare it, can make a big difference as well. So that's okay to really step into. And I feel like, yes, you are so unique. And there is a lot that we can, describe. And I would say the 5-element theory that we hear talked about a lot in like traditional Asian medicine, Chinese medicine, and also in Ayurveda, we talk about the Panchamahabhutas, like the 5 elements. So this shows up a lot, like all holistic health systems. And there's lots of different ways we can talk about it. It's kind of like, okay, if we're looking at like the 5 elements that we see in play all the time in our daily life and nature, air, space, earth, water, and fire. All of us have a unique, proportion of those within us. So we're like this microcosm of the macrocosm. And, some of us have more fire naturally. And this is just part of our DNA unchanging blueprint. And it's part of what makes you incredibly special. And some people have less fire. Some people have more earth. Some people have less earth. So you're just studying those rhythms within yourself and like your natural tendencies. And then what do we do then? And how do these principles support bringing balance for our unique constitution? And there's 3 different major guidelines. So this is here on this bullet point. Number, I think it's about page 8 though. So living in harmony with nature is a fundamental principle in Ayurveda. 2 is that opposites balance. So this is so important when we're looking at constitutional needs and like, okay, if there's, a decrease in fire, we want to bring in the opposite. And so we want to bring in more fire. If something is too hot, however, there's an excess of fire, we want to bring in cooling and water, just cool it off. It goes on and on. If you're feeling too dry, we want to moisten that up. Or if you're feeling excessive moisture, we want to dry you up. And so we can do that with foods and herbs. And that's kind of the overarching principle of Ayurvedic food programs and Ayurvedic eating. So that always works. And I know I do that all the time, and they'll be like, gosh, I'm feeling like I can't get out of bed. I'm like really tired. I'm like, okay, I probably need to go for a little like walk outside, and do something stimulating, something opposite. Or if I'm feeling too overstimulated and anxious and I'm like, I can't slow down. I'm just like, go, 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 go. Like, I probably just need to chill out and just, lay on the couch and just have some quiet time. So it's also something that's applicable in all areas of our life as well, in addition to food, and can be related to how we're eating, always. And then 3 is that consciousness is one of our best medicines. So to empower your mindset, with a lot of love and beauty and, seeing yourself as, this perfect divine light and a lot of gifts to share in the world. So, anything holding, us back, any kind of messaging, and it's so easy to internalize that from the culture. It really does take conscious effort, to undo a lot of those things. And, I didn't share this on the email. I did have a document I want to share with you, though. It's a little worksheet to help you kind of go through and maybe ask some of these deeper questions. So you're welcome to fill that out later. It's kind of like a reflection and integration after the class. And sometimes it's like letting go of something. And I invite you to create a new affirmation for yourself and something that really feels personal and special for you, and write that down. And have that as something that you look at for the next 40 days. And that's said to be about how long it takes to build a new habit and have there be a permanent shift in our brain. And so, and it's okay to start and stop. It never matters how long something takes, it's just to keep activating those choices toward healing. So, having this new positive affirmation for yourself and is looking at that, reading that, and then you really become that over time. So we talked a bit about the relationship between food and hormonal balance. And I feel like one of the biggest things, this is like a little diagram, and it goes between the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system. So, getting really detailed about what happens when we're in one of those 2 modes. And they're both extremely important. And what is helpful for us to know in women's health is that we ideally want to be in the parasympathetic nervous system most of the time. I usually tell my women like 95% of the time is what we want to work up to. And sometimes it may not be even close to that initially or feel like that, but it's totally possible. And if we are perceiving stress, or if we're in, a place where we need to switch to our sympathetic nervous system, that's kind of like the default wiring just in case to take care of us. So that's where our body is always going to go if it's sensing that there's a reason to go there. And it takes practice and habits to kind of train our body. If it's not actually a literal survival response, then we can stay in our parasympathetic nervous system for longer amounts of time. And that's going to help us, again, digest food. That's the only way we can digest. And it's also going to keep our hormones balanced. And there's a more detailed quote here by one of my favorite Ayurvedic and Oriental medicine doctors, like Dr. Claudia Welsh. She did really groundbreaking work on hormonal balance and really made it very practical for women. And one of my very favorite books that I have all the time, Balance Your Hormones, Balance Your Life. And so what happens if we're producing like a need for more stress hormones than our body can keep up with? Progesterone, a yin and feminine hormone, sometimes it's called the sex hormone as well. And you probably heard of progesterone and estrogen, so critical for female hormonal balance, can be converted to make estrogen when it's low. And it can also be used to make cortisol, but it's a one-way street. So anytime we're pumping out more cortisol than our body's demands can keep up with, it's going to usurp it from progesterone. And then progesterone can get depleted. So we want to look at how we can prevent that from happening as much as possible. And also understand that cortisol can't be converted to progesterone. It's not a two-way street. And that's why I like herbs so much for this and hormonal normalizers. And there's one recipe that I share. It's this really beautiful, like shatavari latte with dates and almonds. And you can just make as like a snack or meal, every day if you wanted to, and just start to have some more natural support for hormones. And that's why I don't recommend harsh fast or water fast for women. And I've heard this from a lot of different perspectives and also from training in intermittent fasting. And it can just really throw our hormonal balance off. If our body goes for too long of a time without eating, then it starts to go into that survival mode and it's just pumping out more stress hormones. And then we slow down our metabolism, and then we're actually probably not getting what we wanted, which is the benefits, of having a period of fasting or eating less food. And so I've seen women lose weight by eating more regular meals and keeping their metabolism high because they've turned off, their body's need to produce more stress hormones. Again, long-term weight loss secret. So if anything you can do to decrease your level of toxic stress will always help you. So there's ways, to do healthy cleansing for sure. And it's usually for women's health, eating more food to push out more toxins, and is having those be more alkaline rich and lots of fruits and vegetables. And that's very different for men. Again, it's not bad or good, it's just different physiology. And so men can usually do more water fasts. And sometimes that's what I see some of the confusion with cleansing of like, not so much a one size fits all. And there's lots of ways to adjust cleansing for you, even within a standard program. And there's one I especially love. I've been facilitating for like 7 years. And there's a lot of wiggle room there to make sure that you don't go into the stress response too much. And sometimes you can do intermittent fasting, and knowing that, you just kind of know your limit to your body. And so sometimes maybe having an earlier dinner and just waiting until you have another meal the next morning, that can be a really nice break for your body, as long as you don't feel overly hungry or, aren't triggered in a stress mode. And just staying more in that parasympathetic nervous system place, you're going to get maximum benefit for your body to do that, and hopefully not even knowing that it's cleansing. So there's several tips about women's hormonal health, and also some ways we can activate the parasympathetic nervous system. And that's feeling safe, when you can let down, facial expression, tone of voice, the feelings of connection, singing, dancing, and chanting, physical touch, nature, inclusion. All of these things help us to not go into that stress response. So these are more things we can bring in, and things we can bring in, around our meals and how we're preparing food too. So a little bit more about cleansing. And I usually, when I'm talking about cleansing, I end up have beginner's mentality. And, I love that real key quote, just always having a beginner's mind. That's wonderful to just go back to that place, always being open to learning and new things. And so, and I know some of you walk, a lot of cleanse support through, and you may have done a lot of that, or you may be completely new. And all of these things will always help. So every time we cleanse, these things are important guidelines. And usually it's a lot to do everything at once too. So just kind of breaking it down. And like, an initial cleanse, you might do several things, and the next time you go back to that. And, if you feel like, okay, I'm gleaning new things, or I might try this and add it on the next time. So the most important though is that you have a positive experience with cleansing. That's like my number one. And that hopefully it's part of your lifestyle. So the easiest times of the year to cleanse are the transitions, at least here, in the northern hemisphere, might be a little different, closer to the equator, is the junction between winter and spring, and then also between summer and fall. Summer is a pretty easy time to cleanse, with the warm weather. It's usually harder in cooler weather, and it can be done for sure. And sometimes I say, like, yes, let's just start cleansing immediately for XYZ health condition. But most of the time in preventive health, we want to look at going with nature's rhythms and just making it as easy as possible with all these external factors. So coming up soon, this is a great time to cleanse. We just came into the spring equinox. Is going to be a lot easier to do that now, just naturally. And I gave some, overviews about, when there's reasons to cleanse. And if you are speaking like, oh, I identify with a lot of those things, then that might be a great time to do a seasonal cleanse. And then also there's sometimes, you say like when not to cleanse. And, if any of those things are going on, it's not helpful to cleanse now. It would be better to focus on other things. And there's ways that you can do gentle tonification, gentle detoxification. And I like to train all of my people I work with to do that every single day of the year. And then when you're doing a time for a more focused cleanse, you can go a lot deeper. It's really helpful to not have anything, heavily scheduled before or after a cleanse. So you can just completely rest and give yourself plenty of time to transition, and also mentally just not having a lot of things on your to-do list or thinking about. And also to get a lot of support and scheduling extra self-care and more hot baths, massage, acupuncture. If you feel like you need to take a nap, that you have that flexibility. So yeah, just a lighter schedule as a whole. And it's like I said, there's ways we can, change the intensity of cleansing. And so if it ever feels like it's too much with any cleanse, even one that I'm like, yes, 100%, it's so supportive, but sometimes with that, you can be, and I've done this a lot too, it's just be extra in deprivation mode, or thinking okay, if I'm more strict with myself, I might get extra benefit. But again, that's not always true. And so I usually recommend having lots of fresh juices. And the idea is, our cells are always replacing. We're literally not the same person as time goes by. And if, we do nothing to change that, we're going to be replacing our cells maybe with the same material. But if we're flooding our cells with lots of nutrients and, new fresh life and different dietary choices, our bodies can actually break down old material and toxins and safely remove that and build healthy new tissue. And so, and that's again where usually eating more can be helpful. And I included an overview of, one of my favorite cleanses, master food list of okay, what would it pare down to? And this is not something that is helpful to do all the time, nor is any kind of deep cleanse. And that can be a hard thing. Sometimes I recommend wow, I've been trying to fast for several months, and it's they're not feeling good, and just really low energy. Yeah, I haven't seen it work yet. And so we're not designed to be cleansing all the time. It's we're designed to be eating a lot and active and out in the world. So that's okay. And also, having that healthy metabolism, you'll help, just burn through things. You need that fuel. And then just having those focus times where you can really take a step back from life and do some really deep, cleansing work and replacing tissues. So that's something where it can be nice to pare down to a very simple diet for a while, just like a heavy alkaline food program, get lots of fresh juices, lots of hydration, and increasing more grounding foods anytime you need to, making sure you have complete proteins every day. And if you ever feel like, okay, it's too much, or even just in general in life, you're like, okay, I'm just so hungry, or like, you know, just feel like, okay, did I have any complete proteins today? Maybe I can just ground myself with some more quinoa and sweet potatoes or almonds, just some really grounding foods. And usually that'll help you, you know, just, you know, your body is saying a parasympathetic nervous system. You can just reconnect to feeling balanced. And let's see, anything else? There's a simple beginner's green juice recipe. I also shared an overview about how to do a simple cleanse, and that's great if you're a beginner or advanced. There's different tiers, and there's some really helpful questions too, of like, okay, this is for you if you just have a few days, you know, you're right now, spring's really busy, or you have a couple weeks and you've cleansed a lot and you want to do something different. So go with what feels right. And 3 days is beautiful, and it's so much. You know, it does get easier the more you practice it over time. So it's like a muscle that you're strengthening. And it's a great time to also just cleanse other areas of the life as well. So yeah, huge fan when done well. And this is a picture of one of the classic dishes that's used in Ayurvedic law. This is one that I made a long time ago, and I threw this in here because it has violets and red buds, which are coming into season very soon. And I know a lot of you living on the East Coast, like if you see them popping up, you know, you can harvest them and eat them, and they look so beautiful on anything and everything. So you could just do a 3-day khichdi cleanse. That's considered to be a mono diet, very easy to do at home. And I usually recommend bringing in some level of like extra tonification. So Triphala is one of my very favorite formulas in general, but also for cleansing. And it helps to break down unhealthy fats and toxins, and it's entirely food-based. It's made of 3 different dried fruits. So I find it's like incredibly safe and can help to flush things out and just have some more regular elimination. So that's an overview. And I do offer customized cleanse guidance with my people, and something that I'm happy to walk anybody through, you know, if you have more questions or want more support. And I do these more comprehensive cleanse kit guidance. I don't sell any of them, but I just walk you through the facilitation part. So it is nice, like, to do it with a buddy, and just depending on where you are in your cleansing journey. You know, sometimes these people are like, oh, I just love having a week off. Like, I look forward to cleansing. I just take a little retreat for myself. Usually in the beginning, I'm like, it's really nice to do it with a friend or have somebody that's walking you through as a support. So you can check in regularly. You can be there to motivate each other. And all the things that can come up, you know, to release, you feel like, oh, you're just so free, you know, going through that. And you feel like that nourishment is from many different levels. Okay, lovely. So, okay, a little bit more, and then I'll open it up, you know, for questions. So y'all are doing great, and I know it's, you know, a lot to take in. So, you know, just listening with your heart and letting everything really just, you know, sink in. So looking at foundational dietary needs. So we hit on, you know, several different things, and also, okay, from like a nutritional standpoint, with like what specifically do I break down a food plate to get what I need? Well, that is something that I overviewed as a healthy food plate balance. So this has an overview of healthy fats, vegetables, protein, and carbs. And this is nice to like focus on for one main meal initially. That's how I like to start people. Okay, with like something you're doing every day and you're like, I'm really hungry. Usually lunch, when the solar energy is really high overhead, is a hard meal, you know, to skip. It's like usually people are pretty hungry by then. And so that can be a great starting point, or any meal of the day, that it doesn't matter. And healthy fats and vegetables within that have a lot more flexibility, like meaning if you're still hungry afterward, you can fill up more on them. Carbohydrates and complete proteins like have a bit more of a limit to that. Not that you can't have a lot of that, you know, like 2 to 6 ounces of protein, and about a half a cup to 3/4 cup of carbohydrates. So that's a general overview. And with women, having like 1 to 2 tablespoons of a healthy fat, like ghee, coconut oil, olive oil, or you can substitute 2 tablespoons of whole seeds for 1 tablespoon of carrier oil. And that really helps with satiety and helps with decreasing sugar cravings. And I think, a couple people mentioning that, and sugar tastes really good, and people with more vata and their constitutional types, as well as pitta, thrive from the sweet taste as a whole. And sometimes it's also just having more of other foods that we don't think of as classic sweet taste, like dairy, grains, nuts, meat, all fall into the sweet taste category, in addition to fruits and whole sweeteners. So that's something that can be really helpful to feel really satiated. And for deficient and healthy fats, it's going to spike sugar cravings. Again, it puts your body more into survival mode, and it's like, I need a glucose immediately. And you just, keep craving sugar. And I was that week, gosh, I never thought that would change. I was like, God, a dessert eater. Like, and I was so deficient on healthy fats. And I was trying to do many low fat diets, for a long time. And it just didn't work. It was so hard. And I really was short in that biological need. So almost every single cell in our body is made up of healthy fats. And it also is broken down a lot more slowly. So usually people last a lot longer between meals, and then you end up snacking less. And it's okay to have, the sweet taste and fill up, when you're hungry. And some people need more of that on an ongoing basis. So there's, so many ranges there. And vegetables just is so important. And filling up, that's probably the biggest thing I hear people around food prep, say is just, it never goes away, but it makes a huge difference. And you get so many different phytochemicals, and it just really fills you up, and plenty of regular fiber. So I'm a fan of having really fast and easy ways to prepare vegetables, or have them on the side just in case, throughout the week. So make things easy on yourself. And there's also an overview about times of the day with the doshas, and so how you can kind of structure your natural rhythms. You might notice, like, energy fluctuates and your appetite fluctuates, just depending on what time of day it is. So there's a lot of acknowledgement to that in Ayurveda. Let's see, the 6 tastes. This is just a little snapshot, and I included another article you can read more about. And is this acknowledging that the 6 tastes are really important for enjoying food and feeling really satiated, and having a little bit of each of them in meals can make a really big difference. So my favorite ways to get all of them are with curry powder and also Shizandra tea. Almost all curry powders, not every single one, but I included a recipe in the Tridosic recipes handout that will hit all of the 6 tastes. You can just sprinkle a little bit of that on any kind of dish, and you're good to go. Or make Shizandra tea. It's 1 single berry. I'm actually sipping on it right now. It's my all-time favorite teas, and it has all of the 6 tastes. So very, very special plant. And then I just know that I'm getting all of that in. But there's other ways you can combine different foods. And on that handout, it goes over descriptions of okay, what's in the bitter taste? Our dark leafy greens are bitter. And with the sour, yes, there's the recipe in that handout. And I actually have some here, Shizandra berries. Those are my favorite company specific botanicals. So I'm an herbalist, and I get them by the pound at the time. I don't think they have small amounts. However, you can also find them on Mountain Rose Herbs, your local herb and grocery stores. This beautiful small red berry. And that's something where you can really play around with, forever. And so sometimes you can combine different things. And some foods might have different taste. And, like beans, if you do beans, I don't digest them all, but a lot of people do, has the astringent taste, it has some sweet, and you can hit several things, with one food. So that's something you can mix and match. And let's see, the pungent, bitter, astringent taste, I would say are usually pretty easy to get in spices, and usually just bringing more spices into cooking, helps your body. And in traditional cultures, having dozens of herbs every day is completely normal. And there's such a crossover between food and herbal medicine. So that's an overview that I got. And the other handouts, I'll show you what they look like, and you can read through these later. So tridoshic recipes, and because everybody here has a different doshic type, it's not just more geared to like one type. However, tridoshic recipes, which means it's supportive and balancing for all constitutional types, will be helpful for everybody. So there's a collection of different ones, and I've tried all of these. I hope that you enjoy them. There's different dishes, there's different teas, there's a curry mix. You can just have at home, and can last for 6 months at a time. And one of my favorite chocolate recipes, which is really hard to find, but it's like with women, you usually need it. And so maybe you don't like chocolate, but I know I do. And so this has some herbs that are blended in. And so it neutralizes some of the stimulating effects of chocolate, which, just depending on constitutional type, some people can do more or less. And just in case though, this is going to help to make it as tridoshic as possible. And some places you can get different ingredients and herbs online at the end, and Ayurvedic terms is a reference of what they mean. And 5 foods for hormonal balance. So it's my all-time favorite heavy hitters. I have the Shuzandra tea on here in the recipe, and got dates, pomegranates, avocado, and dark leafy greens as well. And a lot of the reasons why they're really good for women's health and hormonal balance. Of course, there's many others as well. And there's a description about phytoestrogenic foods and what that means. And it's kind of like hormonal normalizers, what I was saying earlier. They're so beautiful because they're tonifying, which is very different sometimes than like synthetic therapies. So when we're looking at the whole plant form of some kind of hormonal normalizer or phytoenergistic food, if you have too much or too little of estrogen or progesterone, it's going to regulate it. So that's just an incredibly miraculous action, and can just work really well for us if we have, need to buffer those amounts out for the long term. And I think, yeah, so I had a couple of visuals here, like, it's my favorite pomegranate seeds, where you can find them for Purian foods. Vitaminal green, this is one of my favorite green supplements. So like in addition to dark leafy greens, are just an easy way to get a lot of things in regularly if you're traveling, and also has algae and seaweed. So you can find this on Amazon or Vitacost. And having whole foods, with, when I say that, more so is like organic, fresh, vibrant, wild-crafted foods. It makes a really big difference. And countries like Denmark, Peru, and Bolivia have like 100% organic food. So, we're so far from that right now, but it's growing so much. And, hitting up local farmers markets and being savvy shopping, it really does make a huge difference. And it's going to give you more dense organic nutrition, and usually tastes a lot better too. So it's usually, easier to get more vegetables in, when they're fresh and organic and high prana. And so, in following your intuition, and this is, a lifelong journey for all of us. And, Ayurveda is very much like, well, we have to eat every day. Let's make this as exquisitely functional as possible, and like, how can we really make this work for us? So it can really be an ally for your health. Yeah, stick around for questions now, and just know that for anyone who's interested in going deeper, and this is an ongoing invitation, I invite you to contact me, and we can set up a complimentary breakthrough session, and you'll have one-on-one time with me, and we'll spend some time getting really clear on where you're at and where you want to go, make a plan. So we can talk about what going deeper would look like, and to decline. There's absolutely no obligation on my part for anyone to continue, working with me. So just know I'm here, I'm in your corner, and I'm really happy to offer this class. As I said, I've offered many different lenses before, and if there's enough interest, I'm happy to do this again. So please let me know if I experience it, if you have any questions, and how I can continue to support you. So I'll just open up now. Feel free to unmute or type in the chat, and I'll just answer all the questions that come in.
I have a question. Can you hear me okay? Okay. Let's see. I just lost it. I am going through this weird phase, and there was someone who came to visit that kind of eats like the Ayurveda lifestyle, that I am not hungry in the morning, which is unheard of in my whole world, my whole life. And she's kind of said, oh, I'm not really hungry. I haven't been hungry lately. Is that just like a phase of the season? It's something new for me. And should I purposely just schedule an eating time for breakfast? Because I'm tending, then what happens is I'll get busy or something, and then I cross the line where I feel very depleted.
Yeah, that's a wonderful question. And I've seen this a lot. It's very nuanced. And again, not knowing, some more details, I can just talk about in general terms. Okay, what's happening? So a lot of stuff can happen around menopause for sure. And that's something, hormones are changing. Ayurveda actually doesn't have any negative connotation around menopause. So I actually love that younger women listen to this and learn. I'm all about intergenerational learning, as you know, and so let's talk about it, normalize it, and go through your 30s and 40s leading up to menopause, create a different trajectory about how you experience that. So with that said, I've seen a lot of women experience dramatic going through that time, and so is that it's kind of par for the course. It's okay if you have a different body experience now, and your body is going to have less estrogen and progesterone that it's producing. Your adrenals are going to take on that functioning much, and so that's considered to be a normal part of life. And we want to make sure you're not depleted and have low energy. That's the part that Ayurveda says there's a lot of support around. But appetite fluctuating, sometimes is totally fine, right? And so you're looking at this idea of Agni again in appetite. We want to, she said I'm going in and out. Oh, can you hear me okay? No? Okay. You all are perfect for me. And let me check something else here.
Just snack it on, kill it in your nose.
Muted. Okay, is that any better now? Okay. Oh, good. Okay. Maybe there's just some background noise. So yeah, thanks for telling me. So, it's always amazing. I'm like, I can't believe we're all all over the world, together. So we're looking at this idea of why is there diminished appetite? And usually in the morning and also throughout the middle of the day, it's naturally higher. Ayurveda places a bigger emphasis on breakfast and lunch as a whole than dinner, which is very different than the modern American, experience. And that was definitely my family of origin. And I completely changed that and I feel a lot better, but sometimes it's not the norm. And so sometimes with a larger evening meal, your body is literally still digesting it the following morning. So I have seen that show up a lot. And just checking in with okay, maybe eating 3 hours before you go to bed as a starting point, and how having more heavier to digest foods early in the day because usually that digestive fire is just a lot lower, before you go to sleep. So, it's just a lot of logs sitting there, and your body's still actually breaking it down in the morning. And that's oftentimes why people aren't hungry in the morning. Now, there's also the possibility of, digestive fire, not being as strong as a whole. It's like, and so just you're beefing that up a bit more. I like to bring in ginger and digestive spices. There's many different ways to do that. Exercise really helps. Again, just going with your unique needs. Sometimes it's also a sign to do a cleanse. And yeah, it's just like your body is like, okay, I just want to flush out things I don't need and not have as many toxins. So those are some different possibilities. So how does that sound to you? Does that help?
So ginger, and what was the other thing for digestive fire building?
Oh, yes. So a lot of digestive teas, there's actually a recipe here that would be perfect. And this is very safe and easy to do for all constitutional types. It's called the CCFT in Ayurveda. It stands for cumin, coriander, and fennel. And so that's really helpful for kindling digestive fire. So any herb that has a carminative action, meaning it'll stimulate appetite, to be very helpful. So ginger does that, or any other tea.
Okay, one more question, then I'll let everybody else talk. Is CCFT, any of those herbs, heating, because my body is so hot from hot flashes and things? Is the tea heating where that would be a problem?
It shouldn't be. None of the tridoshic recipes should be overly heating or cooling. So that's kind of the beauty of tridoshic. If it was too heating, it would be pitta aggravating. There are a couple recipes here that say, like, if you have a lot more pits in your constitution, or you're just running hot right now, or having a lot of hot flashes, then just like do less of a certain ingredient, like garlic, I think is mentioned. You can just skip that and some of the dishes. But CCF, yeah, you can do it just as is, and will be very supportive energetically.
Thank you. I appreciate all that information, and you did a great job if I don't get to say it.
Well, thank you so much. Really glad you're here. So I hope that helped. And yeah, I'll open it up to other people, and let me know. Yeah, do you want to chime in, Kim?
Yes. First of all, thank you for the beautiful presentation, very beautiful presentation. Thank you so much for your time with us, sharing all this information. I know it's going to take me some time to process all of this, of course, but one of the big things that came to mind for myself and understood, like, I know we could probably go into it more so one-on-one, but like I was saying earlier, what brings me like sit in for today, I recognize I'm being more consistent with like being able to cook more at home. What I'm recognizing more like an evening with my work schedule, I work from home, and I'm like in back-to-back meetings. Generally, I have a few breaks in between, but I find myself now in the evening kind of like just burnt out before like I'm about to like prepare dinner. And I've been really intaking what you've been saying about preparing your food with love, and taking that mindfulness when I eat. And I don't know, is there anything that you can share that would encourage like that transition from like work into like preparing for dinner? Because I kind of find myself kind of like, oh, okay, I got to eat because I love food. I want to eat because I don't like, one of my biggest pet peeves, personal pet peeves, is like being hungry in the middle of the night. So I will eat before I go to bed, so I will not experience that. But I want to make sure that I am preparing my dinner with love and not feeling like, oh, I have to do this because, I don't want to be hungry.
Yes, and I struggle with the same thing. If I'm tired, like that's my Achilles heel area. I have to really watch it, and it's just a practice like anything, and getting to know yourself. And there's usually natural dips in our daily routine for all of us, like when we have more or less energy, and just acknowledging that and being really honest with those times when we may not have as much energy, even if we want to have more energy, just, okay, for now, it's just not there. So a couple of things, like I walk a lot of people through like work-life balance, and I'd say like just increasing your energy overall all of the time, so that you're less likely to get as depleted, by the end of the day. And I'm also a huge fan of, models that help, women do that. And, it's not the norm in the US, and it's really hard to find, but places like in Scandinavia with 6-hour work days and 4-day work weeks are very wealthy countries. And when they made that shift years ago, they had no loss in economic gain. And people were a lot more productive with 6 hours. And so, sometimes we can burn the candles on both ends in like trying to be everything for everybody and like extra productive, and it might, just burn us out easily. So, again, it may not be food as much as like, okay, just, tending to your daily needs on an ongoing basis. So you feel nourished enough, and like, yeah, at the end of the day, you want to rest and, have some time off. But you hopefully feel like, positive and joyous enough, to love looking forward to dinner. I'm also a huge fan, if you're working a lot, and depending on the nature of your work, sometimes it's a lot, that you intake and go through, and it might be very different than your home environment, what you create on your own, which might be very loving and joyful, but it's kind of just having a little pause, between work and home life. So it's depending on each person. Sometimes I'll say like, it depends on how you're feeling, whatever that is. So sometimes it's literally laying down. I'd say most of the time for women, it's having some quiet time. Sometimes people have been in a desk all day and very sedentary, in which case, like, just like going for a quick jog for 10 minutes feels really good. So like change your clothes, like disconnect with work energy, and take like 10 to 15 minutes for some kind of positive self-care activity before going into the kitchen. And that might change from time to time. You might just stay with the same thing for a few weeks now. Like, okay, I come home and I'm just going to sit down on, I'm just going to lay down for 10 minutes. Maybe you put on one of your most favorite relaxing pieces of music, is it doing it for you? And then you get up and go to the kitchen. Or it's like, okay, it's beautiful. I haven't been outside today and it's really warm. Like, I'm just going to go outside and just do a nature walk, or do a couple laps around the block, something to break up the day. And that will help your prana energy, and hopefully like get back into that home consciousness. And also building up your home so it's more and more of a sanctuary. And that's what I usually start with my women, is like, okay, we can't always control other environments. Gradually, you can start to bring those things into where you work. And so like when you come home, there's all these reminders already built in the environment. So again, your environment with all of the air and space and perceptions, that it reminds you, how beautiful life is. And there's something, worth shifting your consciousness around to look forward to the evening. There's no shortage of suffering in the world or depressing news. And, as when we're so sad, we can really get caught up on that. And sometimes it can really take us out. And also sometimes like it's not ours to carry on, and like, yeah, we could stay there all the time. What about all of the positive news too? What about all of the incredible things that are happening, all of the good of humanity? And so sometimes it's just like creating those habits that will fuel you to have more of those positive experiences. So having beautiful flowers in the environment is really intrinsic to Ayurveda, or like anything with art. And like, so having your home be super beautiful, and your kitchen, and I'll often like choose a beautiful piece of artwork or painting to bring into your kitchen that you love. So it's not just like in other places. Again, it's not just a chore, it's not work. Like you go and you're like, oh, like I love the colors. Like, I'm looking at pictures of people, like put happy memories on your fridge. Like I have them all over my fridge. I have notes like from children saying, I love you. I have like, really special moments of weddings with my close friends. I have something that always makes me laugh when I see it from a photo booth. And, if I'm like, oh, like, oh, I just don't feel good. And I look at that, I always, always cheers me up. So like just having those things in your environment, maybe you do that on the weekend. So then at the end of the day, you don't have to touch your environment at all. It's already set into place. And then my other thing I would say is like putting on some music. Like I said, I think that's a really quick shift for yourself. I love to dance too. I dance in my kitchen a lot. And a lot of women love to dance. Again, that's a great parasympathetic nervous thing, just like release the stress. Yeah, but that's different from woman to woman. Like, you know, what do you need to do to kind of shake things off and just feel like you're in the moment and you're living the life that you want to live. So for me, music always reminds me of that very quickly and easily. And it just depends on my mood. Sometimes like I just need something calming and relaxing, you know, today, because like really amped up. And then other times I'm like, I just need something really upbeat. You know, I always do that when I'm cleaning to get me like, put on dance music, right? So I have a Spotify playlist. I don't have Spotify right now. I know I have Apple Music, but yes, very, very long dance playlist. So yeah, we could talk about that. And I'm always adding to it too. So you might just have some of your favorites, like you just have a playlist. Maybe it's like relaxation or like, you know, your home playlist, like, and generally also say just wait until you're not like emotionally stirred up to cook or eat too. So it is okay to just wait. You don't have to force yourself, you know, and, you know, sometimes just doing something else that'll change your mindset like right away. And you might not push pressure on yourself to do all of your cooking at the end of the day after a long day too. And that's one of the harder cultural things I see. It really matters with systems like if you had more free time, you know, which most women don't, but that was wonderful, right? And not that, you know, there's no like perfect world per se. However, having some time and space to make fresh and wholesome foods, you know, like, can you take an hour every other day, you know, for that self-care? And it depends on your family responsibilities and your day-to-day, but like on your longer days, I would say just take that pressure off, make it really easy for yourself. And then on the times when you're not working as long or it's just an easier day for whatever reason, you know, things are more on the flow, you didn't get last minute emergencies, then you can maybe just cook a lot more and have more time in the kitchen. So how does that feel? Some ideas.
Sounds good. Sounds really good. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome, my love. Okay. So, do you have any other questions? Oh, somebody asked about B vitamins. I'm just saying that. So overview, I don't know if you've tried B vitamins before. I'm a huge fan for women's health, like hitting on a B complex. And one of the reasons is because they're water soluble vitamins and they help with increasing our body's resistance to stress. So kind of like if you're in a high stress time, it's an easy tool to bring in. I usually recommend a whole B complex. One of my favorites is by Garden of Life, which includes B6, but also a whole host of other ones. I've heard different perspectives and different research, you know, has shown that having many together is like better synthesized and safer in the long term. So you can also get a solid multivitamin. And as some people know, when they work with me, I'm like, you know, if there's one thing you take, just take a natural multivitamin. And as long as it's high quality and easily absorbed and assimilated, it's super safe for the long term. So you do have to be careful about synthetic sources. So again, just being really sure that it's natural. And then in addition to a multi, is add in a B complex like as needed. And for any women that might be struggling with PMS, that's one common go-to. And then this is great for menopause too. It's like just something really stubborn showing up. You might try that for a while and see how you feel. Sometimes it's one of those missing pieces. Was that Miranda? So does that help? Do you have any other questions?
No, that was actually very helpful. I noticed that because I'm over 40, so my over 40, first of all, I didn't recognize that there was different vitamins. I guess I did, but I didn't recognize I was getting into the time where I'm needing, you know, over 40 multivitamin, but it has a very low vitamin B. And then also because I'm kind of, maybe feeling like I'm going into the perimenopause area. So I was researching that B6 is a really good option to kind of help with that, like you were talking about earlier with the overproduction of cortisol and how that impacts all of your health. So I will definitely check out the Garden of Life because I've used some of their other vitamins, and I will make sure to use that, and not just like you said, look for a B complex so that it's supporting all sides of that particular vitamin. So that was very helpful.
Oh, wonderful to hear that. And yeah, let me know how it goes. And if you have any other questions, it's usually one that is wonderful and easy to integrate.
Awesome. Thank you.
Does anybody else have any questions? Feel free to chime in, mute yourself, type in the chat. Okay, sound good. Well, I'm going to stop the recording and